Good morning, Saddleback. I'd like to say hi to all of our campuses, and for those who are joining us online, if you take out your message notes, we're starting a new series this weekend. Kay and I are starting a series called Awesome Relationships. Next week, we're gonna look at awesome families. The week after that, awesome friendships. The week after that, a special message for single adults in our church on how do you find the love of your life. And I've got a good friend of mine, Neil Clark Warren, a Christian counselor, who founded a little thing called eHarmony. And I've asked the founder of eHarmony to come and talk about how do you find the love of your life. So you better get your notes ready for that weekend, since about a third of our church are people who are single adults. Now, this weekend, I want us to look at fighting for an awesome marriage. Take out your notes and look at the verse at the top. Paul says this. Now, Paul was not married. Paul was a single adult. And St. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 7:7. We're all given different gifts. God gives the gift of marriage to some, and to others, he gives the gift of singleness. So not everybody's supposed to be married. God says in his word that we get different gifts from him. Some he gives the gift of marriage, and some he gives the gift of singleness. Old translations call it the gift of celibacy, but everybody knows what it is. It's singleness. Now, how do you know if you have the gift of singleness? I know you're waiting with bated breath for this. And here's the way. If you have any desire to get married someday, you don't have this gift. That's the telltale sign, okay? If you say, you know, really, I'd like to be married someday. I'd like to have a wife. I'd like to have a husband. Then you don't have the gift of singleness. The gift of singleness, when God gives it, means I'm perfectly happy to live the rest of my life not married. That's the gift of singleness. Now, whether you have never been married, or you're divorced, or you're separated, or you're widowed, or you are currently married, regardless of what state you're in, the next verse applies to all of us. Look at this verse. Hebrews 13:4, marriage should be honored, read it with me, by everyone. Circle that, by everyone. So regardless of whether I ever marry or not, or whether I've been married in the past and I'm not now, I am to honor marriage. The Bible says, by God, everyone is to give honor to marriage. Now, sadly, marriage is no longer honored by everyone in our society. In fact, just the exact opposite. Today, marriage is dismissed as irrelevant by many people, as an archaic thing. Who needs to get married? That's something somebody made it in another generation or in another culture, a man-made lifestyle choice, and really it's dismissed. Nobody needs to get married today. It's demeaned by many people. Marriage is demeaned as a career buster. You're getting married, well, there goes your career. It's down the pike, it's down the tube. Marriage is delayed. People are delaying marriage more and more, many times for the wrong reasons. Now, there are good reasons for delaying marriage, but there are also selfish reasons for delaying marriage. Marriage is being redefined, it's being ridiculed, it's being demeaned, it's being denounced, it's being discouraged, marriage is disrespected. We don't live in a culture where marriage is honored by everyone anymore. And even Christians fall for this trap. And part of the problem is nobody knows the basics of marriage anymore. 50 years ago, if I were to go out on the street and say, tell me the purposes of marriage, they could give you the 5 or 6 purposes of marriage. Nobody knows these today. And so marriage is treated like just one more little lifestyle choice. It is not. It's far more important than you realize whether you ever get married yourself or not. And it's absolutely essential. God gave it to us, marriage, for 6 reasons. Most people don't know why marriage matters. In fact, most people either A, have an incredibly unrealistic view of marriage, which there's no way anybody could measure up to it, or 2, they're just flat out wrong about the meaning and the purpose and the design of marriage. Most people don't get it right. Now, the reality is, marriage won't solve all your problems. Let me correct that. Marriage won't solve any of your problems. Anybody married want to give a testimony right now? Okay. Now, a lot of people think marriage creates problems. I didn't have problems till I got married. Oh, no, 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 that's wrong too. Marriage doesn't solve your problems. Marriage doesn't create your problems. Marriage reveals problems. It reveals problems. If I'm cranky, my marriage is going to reveal it. If I'm a perfectionist, my marriage is going to reveal it. If I'm fearful and insecure and a worrywart, my marriage is going to reveal it. If I'm bitter and angry and controlling and manipulative, my marriage is going to reveal it. Marriage don't create problems. Marriage reveal them. They just show up in marriages like in no other relationship. I've got friends who've gone through multiple relationships, and some have been in multiple marriages, and sometimes I'm counseling somebody and I say, I don't understand. I've been married multiple times. My relationships just suck. And I want to say, well, what do you think's the common denominator? You are. You know what the problem with my marriage is? Me. You know what the problem with your marriage is? You. And so we bring problems into marriage, and marriage simply magnifies what's already a problem that maybe it's masked when I'm living as a single adult. So marriage isn't going to solve all your problems. It reveals them. Marriage will not turn your life into a picnic. Marriage will not balance the harmonic convergence of the universe. There are a lot of things marriage can't do, but it does have a God-designed function. It does have a God-designed form, and it is far more important. Marriage is far more important than you realize. In late November, next month, Pope Francis of the Catholic Church is having an international conference on why marriage matters. And he's asked 2 speakers from America, and I'm one of them. Okay? So I thought I would share a little bit today before Kay comes out. I'd share with you what I'm going to tell the Pope. Actually, I'm sure he already knows these. I guarantee you he knows these. But I am going to share this in greater detail at this international conference. Now, I can't go into these 6 reasons in detail. But I want you to just list these before we get into how do you fight for an awesome marriage. I want you to know the 6 reasons why marriage matters, this brief overview, because you need to be able to explain it to other people, because nobody around you, nobody in culture, nobody you know getting married or getting divorced knows all 6 of these. They just don't think about them. So let's look why God designed marriage. Number 1, write these down. First, God created marriage for the connection of men and women. God created marriage for the connection of men and women. Now, I want to show you a verse up on the screen in just a second. 1 Corinthians 11:11 says this on the screen. In God's plan, men and women need each other. Do you know how radical a statement that is today? A lot of people don't believe that. There are a lot of people who say, women, they don't need men. Why would I need a man? And a lot of men say, why would I need a woman? Well, you do. And the God who designed you, created, whether you ever get married or not, if you're a woman, you need men in your life. If you're a man, you need women in your life. Why? Because nobody holds the full image of God. Women get part of it, men get part of it, and we need each other. God wired it this way. God thought up gender. God thought up sex. What a God. And God thought up marriage. He thought it all up. It was his idea. It wasn't some man-made construct. Now, the Bible goes back to the very beginning in the creation of the first couple and the first marriage. And in Genesis chapter 2, the Bible says God creates Adam, and he doesn't make Eve yet. Why did God make man and then woman a little bit later? Why didn't he make them both at the same time? Because obviously he had every intention. I think he did it for Adam's benefit. I think he wanted Adam to realize how much he needed women in his life. Now the Bible says this in Genesis 2:18. It is not good, this is God talking, it is not good for the man, that's Adam, to be alone. I will make a companion who is right for him. I'll make a companion who is right for him. I will make, now notice, the first thing you need to realize is marriage, gender, sex, men and women, all the differences, this is a God-given thing. And God intended marriage, one of the purposes of marriage is as an antidote to loneliness. Look at the next verse. He says there, it is not good for men to be alone. Now, there are many, he says, I'm gonna make a companion, and many companions are important in life. You need companions in all your areas, but there's nothing like the companionship of a marriage. You can talk to any married couple and they will tell you, yes, there are many other kinds of relationships and they're all good in life, but nothing at all compares to the companionship of a man and a woman who are committed to each other for the rest of their lives. There's no other relationship that could possibly compare. That is in a relational class by itself. And God calls that marriage. Now here's what Jesus had to say about it, Mark 10. God's plan has been seen from the beginning of creation. When he made us, male and female. God made males, God made females. And God chose what he wanted you to be. This explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united as one body. Now, since they are no longer two but one, God sees a married couple as one. No one should separate them, for God has joined them together. Now, this is a very important passage of Scripture, and I could spend a lot of time on it. Let me just make 3 points at it. That passage says 3 things. Number one, marriage is God's plan. It's not a human plan. It's not a human idea. It's not a tradition that we can just throw out. God invented marriage when he invented you, when he invented me, when he invented humanity. Marriage is God's plan. Second thing that verse says is that marriage is between a man and a woman. There are a lot of other relationships, but those aren't marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman. And their body parts fit together, and they fit together for a purpose. The creation of everybody else. And the third thing it says is marriage is to be permanent. It says what God joins together, God joins a couple in marriage, no one else should separate. It's meant to be permanent, meant to be life. Do you realize how radical those 3 statements are? That marriage is God's idea and plan, that marriage is for a man and a woman, and that marriage is to be permanent. Nobody believes that anymore, but it's still the truth. It's still the truth. It's still the way God designed marriage. And just because we live in the real, not necessarily the ideal, doesn't mean we get to say the ideal doesn't exist. It does. It does. Now, as a pastor, I have done, I don't know how many thousands of weddings. I couldn't count how many weddings I've done. One of the things I like about the modern wedding is that people are writing their vows now. I think that's good in one sense because it's better than just saying, I do. I mean, when people write their own vows, they tend to express more of themselves, and you get to hear their love for the other person, and that's a good thing. But there's also a downside of people writing their own vows today, and it's this. They're leaving out God. I can't tell you how many vows I've heard that are really more like a junior high social contract. I will love you as long as the sun shines. Well, what happens when it rains tomorrow? Okay? You get a divorce then? I will love you because you make me feel so great. Well, what happens when they get in the hospital and they can't make you feel great? Do you divorce them then? I love you because you're so beautiful. What? I hate to tell you this, she's gonna lose her beauty. And you already have. Okay? That's I love you if. I love you if. That's conditional love. That's not a love that makes a marriage last. So a lot of contracts today in marriage really sound like a 36-month lease for an auto. It's like, I love you as long as we both shall love. Really? I love you till death do us part, or divorce do us part. They're leaving out God. The first thing about marriage is that God created it, and he created it for the connection of a man and a woman for life. Number two, God created marriage for the multiplication of the human race. For the multiplication of the human race. It's how we all got here. You are sitting where you're sitting, and you are listening online where you're listening online because a couple got together and made you. And this was God's idea. God populated the human planet through marriage. For thousands of years, billions of people have come on into existence because men and women got married. And God says, this is part of my plan. Now, let me give you a little background on this. The Bible says that God is love. We've talked about this many times. That's his character, it's his nature. The only reason there's love in the universe is because God is love. If God was not a loving God, you would not have any love in your life. There would be no love in the universe. The only reason you are able to love is because you, as a man or woman, were created in God's image. Squirrels don't love because they're not made in God's image. Worms don't love because they're not made in God's image. Ants don't love because they're not made in God's image. But men and women have the capacity to love because we're made in God's image. And God said, I want to love and I want to express my love. And the Bible says everything that God has made, he made it simply in order to love it. You were made in order for God to love you. That's why you exist. If God didn't want to love you, you wouldn't exist. Everything in the universe, God made to love it. And the Bible says that God created the universe because he wanted a family to love. So he created the universe so he could create the human race, so he could love us, knowing that some of us would choose to love him back, and then we would live with him forever and ever and ever in his eternal family in heaven. Now think about this. God chose everybody who's going to be in heaven to come into existence through marriage and sex. That's the way he chose. Nobody would be in heaven if God hadn't created marriage, because everybody's come into existence through the tool that he designed. Now, let me show you some verses. Genesis 1:27 says this. For God created people in his own image. He patterned them after himself, creating both male and female with his image. Then, so not every, males don't have all the image of God, females, we both get parts of God's image. Then God blessed them and commanded them. Now, here's the very first command God gives to the human race. I want you to read it aloud with great gusto. Ready? Here we go. God commanded them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Wow. So God's first command to the human race is get married and have sex. That, by the way, friends, is the only command of God the human race has been able to keep. And we've done a pretty good job at that one. There are about 7 billion of us on the planet because your parents and their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents were fruitful and multiplied and filled the land, filled the world. So we're all here. The point is that God says, one of the purposes of marriage is for the multiplication of the human race. It's not the only purpose, but it's a big one. Look at this next verse, Malachi 2:15. I love this in the Message paraphrase. God, not you, made marriage. His Spirit inhabits even the smallest details of marriage. And why does what does God want from marriage? He's real clear. Godly children from your union. Because if people don't have kids, those kids aren't going to be born. They can't get into heaven. He wants godly children from your union. So guard the spirit of marriage within you. Now, this is not an indictment for a childless couples who don't have kids. There are couples who want kids and for whatever reason cannot have them or have been unable to have them. And if you're married and you can't have kids, God is not disappointed in you. That's not what this verse is saying. What it is saying is that we're all alive because some couple got together. And for thousands of years, God has used marriage to populate heaven. And if men and women weren't getting together and marrying and having sex, then there would be nobody in heaven. That's the second reason, or second purpose of marriage. Number 3, the third reason God created marriage, for the connection of men and women, for the multiplication of the human race. Third, for the protection of children. God invented marriage for the protection of children. We all know that kids grow better, healthier, stronger when they grow up in a stable family, when they grow up in a marriage with a mom and a dad. Now, why did God create marriage for the protection of children? Because when you were born completely helpless. You could not do anything. You couldn't feed yourself, you couldn't dress yourself, you couldn't change your diaper, you couldn't blow your nose, you couldn't even turn over on your back when you first started. You were literally totally helpless. God knew that human children needed a safe environment. And you were gonna need somebody to feed you and dress you and nurture you. You were gonna need somebody to protect you, to guide you, to train you, to care for you, and all these things. Now, I asked my researchers to go out and research all of the national and international studies on the effect of marriage or the lack of a marriage on children. And I asked them to find me all those studies. Here they are. Okay, these are not Christian studies. These are studies by Harvard University and the United States government and the National Institute of Health. There's about 150 different studies. I want to read to you some of the statistics, if I can find them, of what God said about, what society has said about, well, I can't find those notes. Never mind. Is it down there? It's in the book. Oh, it's in here? You're right. Thanks, Steve. Would you please sit on the front row from now on? Leonette, you married a good guy. All right. Let me give you a summary of 150 studies on the impact of marriage, negative or positive, on children. Studies have shown that if children grow up without two parents, without a mom and dad, there's an increased risk that they are going to, A, fail in school. Kids without two parents are more likely to not graduate from college. Kids without two parents are more likely to be involved in substance or alcohol abuse. They're more likely to experience distress, depression, and the risk of suicide. They're more likely to do jail time. They're more likely to live their entire lives in poverty, and they're more likely to increase the risk that they themselves will divorce or will bear children outside of marriage. On the other hand, children who live with their own two parents growing up, statistically proven, enjoy better physical health than children living in any other family form. Now, I didn't say this is just what 150 or so studies have shown. How about women? Studies show that women who marry and stay married have lower rates of depression than either single women or mothers cohabitating with a guy that they're not married to. Women who marry and stay married have a lower risk of being a victim of a crime, have a lower risk of violence in their life. Women who marry and stay married have a higher net worth than those who are living with a man they're not married to. Isn't that interesting? How about men? Studies have shown that men who marry and stay married earn more money than single men with similar education, job histories, and men who marry and stay married live longer than single men. Men who marry and stay married amass more net worth than those who live with a woman and not being married to them. And men who marry and stay married have fewer injuries and illnesses. What's that saying? It's just saying something real simple. When you do it God's way, it works out better in your life. Now, every single study done has proven that kids develop best with a mom and a dad. Now, we're in a broken planet, broken world. Not everything works right. We know that. But that doesn't mean that we say the ideal isn't real. It is. And the statistics bear it out. Children survive and thrive in families, not in institutions. That's why at Saddleback, we don't believe in orphanages. We don't fund orphanages. We don't build orphanages. We don't believe in orphanages. Why? Because no kid deserves to grow up in an institution. They deserve to grow up in a family. It'd be more important to help finance a family to take that child in. Yeah, you can clap for that. And so we're working in Rwanda. Rwanda will become the first nation on the planet Earth by the end of the next year, hopefully, to be the first nation with no orphanages. Because we've been using in the Peace Plan churches, moving them into families. Children's interests are best perfected in an intact family. Notice this verse, Proverbs 14:26. Those who obey and respect the Lord, in other words, do life the way God says to do it, those who obey and respect the Lord have a secure fortress. Their children have a place of refuge and security. That's what every child needs growing up, a place of refuge and security. And not worrying, is dad gonna walk out? Is mom gonna walk out? Or whatever. Now, you know in the past, you used to hear about couples, they say, oh, they stayed together for the sake of the kids. And for many generations, when people stayed together for the sake of the kids, that was considered an honor, a compliment. They're unselfish, they're mature, they stayed together for the sake of the kids. Today, people laugh at that statement. Staying together for the sake of the kids, what are you talking about? You gotta do what's best for you. Really? Do you always have to do what's best for you? That's called narcissism. Can you sometimes do something that's maybe best for somebody else? Can you sometimes do something that's best for somebody for the sake of someone who's more vulnerable than you are? That's called maturity. That's called unselfishness. That's called love. Today in our narcissistic culture, we judge everything by, I've got to do what's best for me. No, you don't. In fact, you'll never be happy trying to always do what's best for you. You'll be a selfish little clod, bitter. Clod, that's a pastor's cuss word. Number 4, okay, God created marriage for the connection of men and women, for the multiplication of the human race, it's how we all got here, for the protection of children. Number 4, this is a big one. God created marriage for the perfection of our character. God created marriage for the perfection of our character. It is in relationships that we learn to be unselfish, we learn to be unloving, and no relationship has greater impact on your life than marriage if you get married. Now, another one of the facts about when you were born, not only were you helpless, you were completely self-centered. Nothing on the planet Earth is more self-centered than a new baby. A baby does not even have the capacity to think about anyone else. All it can think about is itself. I'm too hot, I'm too cold, I'm hungry, I just pooped, I need to be cleaned up, or whatever. The first word a baby learns is, I. And it's all about me as a baby. Maturity and the purpose of life is to grow up and realize it's not all about you. In fact, the real happiness comes in giving your life away and being unselfish and being serving and being loving. And so the whole goal of your life is to grow from your total self-centered self as a baby to being an unselfish adult. Do you know some adults who are still selfish babies? Yes, you do. Don't look at them, but you know who they are. Now, this is called maturity. Life is a laboratory of learning how to love. Why is love the most important thing in life? Because God is love, and God wants you to become like Him. He wants you to learn how to love. And we learn to love and learn to be unselfish. Now, the Bible says this in Proverbs 18:1. It is selfish and it is stupid to think only of yourself. And so how do I get out of that? Well, marriage is a lifelong course in learning to be unselfish. Because once you get married, I can no longer think about me. I got to think about we. I can't think about just me, myself, and I. How many of you who are married had to learn pretty quickly that once you got married, you couldn't always do whatever you wanted to do? The rest of you are liars. Because you don't get to do everything you want to do once you get married. You have to learn to compromise. You have to learn to think of the other person. And marriage is the laboratory for learning how to love. Now listen, God wants to make you like Jesus Christ. It's the number one goal in His life. He wants you to grow up. He wants to build character. You're not taking your car, your career, your clothes to heaven. You are taking your character. So the most important thing you can do in life is build your character. The number one tool that God uses in your life to build Christ-like character, if you are married, is your spouse. Oh no. Yep. Because every day you get hundreds of opportunities to not think about you. You get opportunities to think of the other person, to care about them. You say, but my spouse, my husband, my wife is not even a Christian. They're not a follower of Jesus. They're not a believer. Doesn't matter. They don't have to be saved. They're still God's number one tool to make you like Christ because they're closest to you and they have that most impact. I want you to write this down in your outline. The number one purpose of marriage is to make me holy, not happy. That is so counterculture, but it's the truth. Now, here's the interesting thing. Once you become holy, that's how you get happiness. Being holy makes you happy. But God's purpose in your life is to make you holy, not happy. And that's the purpose of God's marriage for your life, is that you become more loving, more giving, more serving, more sharing, more mature, more unselfish. And as you become that, guess what? You get more happiness. You'll never be happy if you make it the goal of your life. Happiness is elusive as a goal. It's never meant to be a goal. It's like a butterfly. You're always reaching for it and you never get it. When you start caring about other people rather than your happiness, you're going to get happy. It's just the way God wired the universe. So God wants us to learn how to love in marriage. Romans 12 says this, love sincerely. Hold on to what is good. Be devoted to each other like a loving family. Excel in showing respect for each other. Do you do that in your marriage? Do you have a competition of who can show the most respect? I'm gonna beat you today in being more respectful to you. I'm gonna beat you today in being more loving. Excel in showing respect for each other. You know, before I got married so many years ago, I really thought I knew how to love a woman. I knew nothing about love, nothing. Now, after 39 years of marriage, I know that love washes the dishes. I know that love takes out the garbage. Shoot, when you're sick, love changes the bedpan. And out of that kind of love comes a connection and a companionship that gives you the strength and the stability to handle enormous amounts of stress. When you know someone that well, and you're as committed to each other because of that reason. Number 5, God made marriage for the connection of men and women, multiplication of human race, protection of children, the perfection of our character. God created marriage for the construction of society. Marriage is the fundamental building block of every community, church, state, nation, society, and culture. If you know anything about history, You know that where marriages are strong, cultures and nations are strong, empires are strong. You know that wherever marriages and families are weak, cultures, nations are in decline. And we know that when marriages are devalued, the more a nation is in decline. It's real obvious what direction our nation is headed right now. America's not getting better. It's not getting stronger. It's going the other direction. Why? Because we don't value marriage and family anymore. We value, it's all about me. I got to do what's best for me. We've made individualism an idol. So this is for the construction of society. Proverbs 14:34 says this: righteousness, that means doing it God's way, lifts up a nation. But sin, not doing it God's way, brings disgrace to any society. Number 6, this is the most important reason of all, and many of you have never, ever even heard this reason for marriage. But it's the primary, the deepest, and the most profound reason that God created marriage between a man and a woman and the unity of sex and all of that it involves. God created marriage for the reflection of our union with Christ. For the reflection of our union with Christ. Marriage is a metaphor. It is a symbol. It's a walking, living object lesson of how much God loves us and how we are to be in relationship with Him. Marriage is a model of a profound spiritual truth. I said it's a metaphor of showing us how we're to relate to God. Now, let me show you one of the deepest passages in Scripture. And Paul is actually talking about the church and Christ, but he uses marriage as a metaphor. There on your outline, Ephesians chapter 5 says this: husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. How did Christ love the church? He sacrificed his life. He died for the church. He says, husbands, that's the way you're to love your wife. You're to die for your wife. That's the kind of love you're to have. Sacrificial love, where her needs are so before yours that you sacrifice your life. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. He, Christ, died so that he could give the church to himself as a bride in all her beauty. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as they love their own bodies. No one ever hates his own body, but he feeds it. He takes care of it. And that is what Christ does for his church, his body. See, the church is a bride and church is a body. Now, the scripture says, and he's quoting the verse in Genesis we just looked at, and the scripture says, a man is united with his wife, and the two become one body. This is a profound mystery. But I'm talking about Christ and the church. You go, wait a minute, Paul. I thought you were talking about marriage here, husbands and wives. No, he says, yeah, I know I'm using marriage, but it's a metaphor of our spiritual union with Christ and his love for his family, his body, his bride, the Christ, the church. So, he says, because marriage is a metaphor of Christ and the church, so each husband must love his wife as much as he loves himself, as he loves himself. And, it says, each wife must respect her husband. Now, that passage is so deep, I'm gonna have to take a whole nother message sometime and explain it in detail. But let me just say it this way. This is the most profound meaning of marriage. There's some benefits of marriage that are obvious and quantifiable, like these. What it does to kids, what it does to women, what it does to men. The benefits of an intact marriage for life are incontrovertible, irrefutable. And there are a lot of benefits to marriage that you can just look at, empirically, judging the scientific data. But this one the most profound meaning of marriage is not as easy to grasp. It's harder to understand and appreciate how marriage reflects our union with Christ and our relationship to Him. Now, listen. No other relationship on planet Earth, none, including parent-child relationship, no other relationship can adequately illustrate our union with Christ the way a marriage between a man and a woman does. This is the strongest reason, this number 6, why marriage matters. This is the strongest reason why marriage cannot be redefined. This is the strongest reason why it must be protected at all costs, because we are the body of Christ. We are the bride of Christ in union with Christ, and marriage is that metaphor. Now let me summarize. What I'm saying, before we get into the practical part, is that it really doesn't matter what other people think about marriage. It doesn't matter what public opinion says. It doesn't matter what the opinion polls say. It doesn't matter what's politically correct or incorrect. What really matters is what God says, who invented marriage. And you're going to live in a culture where this is absolutely counterculture. You now live in a culture that has forgotten why marriage matters. You live in a culture that does not honor it, but actually demeans it, discourages it, ridicules it, redefines it, dismisses it, and on and on. And as a result, we can see what's happening in society. We now have people who go to Las Vegas, get drunk, and in a spontaneous moment go to a wedding chapel, get married, and 24 hours later get divorced because it's no big deal. It's just a social contract. We have celebrities who spend a full year and millions and millions and millions of dollars on a wedding, and the preparation for the wedding lasts longer than the marriage. We have people going from one relationship to the next in serial marriages. And they don't understand the meaning and the mystery. Now, what's amazing about all of this is that when we live in a culture that's forgotten why marriage matters, we still honor, and it still makes big news, when a couple makes it a long time. And it's still big news when we hear on the radio or TV or in a magazine, that couple has been married 60 years. That couple's been married 65, 70. That couple's been married 75 years. Why? Because in spite of all the public and political pressure, we instinctively, as human beings, inside know and we recognize the beauty and the sweetness of one man and one woman committing themselves to become one flesh and living together in love for their entire lives. That is a beautiful thing. And we know it. And we know it. And we know that deep down inside of us, instinctively, we are wired to want this. Everybody craves the safety of a relationship where you are so fully known and known by each other, and it lasts for life. Everybody wants that. So I'm going to ask in just a second Kay to come out, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. But let me just end with this section, with this part. Twice in the Bible, Jesus says there's going to be no marriage in heaven. Huh? Nope. No marriage in heaven. Jesus said it twice. He knows more about it than you or me. Why will there be no marriage in heaven? Because you won't need any of the 6 reasons marriage exists. In a perfect place, that you're not going to need the multiplication of the human race. In a perfect place, you're not going to need the protection of children. In a perfect place, you're not going to need the perfection of your character. You're not going to need the construction of society. You're not going to need the reflection of Christ's union. You don't need a metaphor because you're going to experience the real thing in heaven. But here on earth, marriage matters. And the Bible says we are to honor it whether we're ever married or we're married or lost a maid or whatever. We're to honor marriage. So in a society that doesn't like marriage, how do you fight for your marriage? Because there's nothing in society, if you're married, nothing in society is encouraging you to stay married. Everything around you is encouraging you to walk out. So how do you fight for your marriage? Well, as I said, Kay and I have been married 39 years, so I thought I'd ask her to come and help us. Would you give a warm welcome to my best friend? Now, we know that life is seasonal. You go through different seasons, you go through them over and over and over. So, talk to us, babe, about the seasons of marriage. And let's just share with them. You know, we've gone through a lot of seasons, ups and downs, good times, bad times, a lot of pain, a lot of joy. And I want to spare some people some pain.
Yeah. Well, we want to use the metaphor, the time when maybe your marriage is super busy. You're both like, you know, you're like ships passing in the night. It's just a super intense time of busyness. We're going to use summer to talk about, you know, it's the good stage. It's gravy. I mean, everything is going well. Fall, we're going to use to talk about when there's change going on, and then winter when, you know, the bottom falls out, when everything kind of falls apart. When we had premarital counseling before we got married, we were told that we were going to struggle in 5 areas: communication, sex, in-laws, parenting, and money. And we were 5 for 5 on our honeymoon.
On the honeymoon, did you hear that?
Yeah, it was a, let's just say it was an inauspicious beginning.
You know, we've been married 39 years. I say 36 great years.
35, maybe. Give or take a few months.
Yeah, maybe a few, yeah.
So we really did want to just talk to you about the seasons that we've gone through in these years that every relationship is going to go through. So spring is the season of busyness.
Yeah.
And
well, busyness, I actually think that busyness is the #1 destroyer of marriages. We get too busy for each other. You don't have time to talk, you don't have time to think, you don't have time for sex, you don't have time to just be together because you're so busy going around in different places. And see, what happens is, women, you need to understand guys. Guys are men on a mission. They're goal focused. And so at one stage in a guy's life, he's going, I gotta find me a woman. And so he starts searching and prowling around. He's a man on a mission. When he finds that woman, now he hones in and he's locked in. He will do whatever it takes to win her. And he's gonna woo her. And he'll do all kinds of stuff that he doesn't like to do, like go to the opera and talk for 2 hours on the phone, and something that no man would normally do. You know, these kind of things during the dating period, because he's a man on a mission. Once she says yes, they're married, he's gone, okay, my bucket list, mission accomplished, checking that off. Now I gotta go to the next one, which is, now I gotta provide, because we're probably gonna have a family, we gotta make some money. And so all of his attention goes over to finding a job or whatever. And his wife goes,
bait and switch.
Yeah, bait and switch. Where did that guy go? You know, it's just like 2 different characters.
Yeah.
So how do we help people? Obviously, we have very busy lives.
Well, I think what happens where it gets messy is that there's always periods of time that are super busy, and we trick ourselves into thinking, oh, this is only going to last for a short time.
Right.
You know, in 3 months, this is going to ease up. Our schedules are going to be different. Things are going to look different than they are right now. If we can just hang on for this amount of time, we won't be as busy. The problem is that those kinds of seasons turn into patterns. Yeah. And before you know it, it's a lifestyle. It's a pattern. It's a habit of living an incredibly busy life when you don't have time for the people and the person that means the most to you.
So there's a couple things that we've done, and these would be good tips or suggestions for when you're in the spring of life, when you're really, really busy. And by the way, when you have preschoolers, that's the ultimate spring because you're super, super busy. One of them is make time for fun. One of the phrases Kay and I have had for like 39 years is divert daily, withdraw weekly, and abandon annually. Divert daily means every day you do something fun. Find something fun to do, okay? Second is withdraw weekly. Take a weekly day off and then abandon annually, have an annual vacation. Talk about our day off.
Well, yeah, our day off, obviously when he's preaching, weekends are not fun. Well, they're fun. He likes his job, but you know, I mean, it's not a time of relaxation. It's work for him. Yeah. So then by Mondays, he's wiped out. It has been for all the years that he's been a pastor here. So Mondays became our regular day off. So even no matter how busy we are, we have made sure we took a day off. And then we always take a vacation. Sometimes you can say, well, I mean, if you're married and you think, how long has it been since we've taken a vacation? Couples can get in a rut to where either finances get in the way or literally the schedule, there just isn't time to carve out a vacation. And we've been intentional about that, even if it was a staycation. You know, maybe money has been tight at different times. Even if you just stay home and watch Netflix and, you know, eat cereal and milk. I mean, whatever. It's just the intentionality of planning a time. Yeah. And I would say that's probably the most...
Intentionality, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's intentional in busy seasons, in that spring, of just looking for ways. It's like turn off the phone, turn off the computer, look at each other's eyes. It may not be the 2 hours like it was when you were dating, but, you know, at least take that time to intentionally focus and connect with each other.
Well, you know, you have to make time in dating. You make time to go on dates. When you get married, you need to date your mate. The problem is a lot of people stop dating once they get married. You need to continue. What you did to get married is what you must continue to do the rest of your life to stay married. I say it like this. If there were more courting in marriage, then there'd be fewer marriages in court. And so date your mate and do fun things and do creative things and just have fun together.
Well, the goal is to be one. He read that scripture that when God made them male and female, and they were one. And so from the minute you say yes, the minute that you commit yourself in marriage, in God's eyes, you are one. And so the whole goal of your relationship is to continue to build that oneness and that unity. And in that season of extreme busyness, that can get lost. And so to ask yourself the question, okay, so if I decide to do this, or if I take this commitment, will that be something that builds unity and oneness in our relationship, or is that gonna work against unity and oneness? It's trying to live out what God has said marriage is to be, which is that oneness, that harmony, that one mind, one body, one soul, one heart.
Okay, so here's in the first season, the busy season, here's my assignment. If you're married, and I don't care how busy you are, go out on a date this week, okay? I am commanding you as your pastor to go out on a date this week if you're married.
You gonna pay for it?
No.
Oh, well, shucks,
Absolutely
too bad.
not.
Sorry, I tried.
All right, talk to us about the second season.
Okay, so the second season that we've observed in our relationship and talking to thousands of couples through all these years is summer. And that would be, I mean, summer, doesn't everybody love summer? It represents, man, things are great. Everybody looks forward all year to summer season. So there are times and periods in your relationship in which really everything is going great. You know, your health is good, maybe you've got enough money, you're not struggling with finances, you're getting along great, and it just feels like summer is this easy breezy time. The unfortunate thing is, as we've discovered, is that those periods of time seem to be very small.
Yeah, they don't last very long.
They don't last very long.
Season as some of the others.
There's always something that interrupts that. But when you're in one of those seasons of that just kind of easy breezy time, we say that's the time to invest in your relationship. That's the time to plant. That's the time to like store up against.
Bank it.
Would you like to talk?
I like to interrupt. You're watching our marriage in action right here.
This is an ongoing problem, young man. And then I forget what I'm saying.
Bank the relationships.
Yes.
Bank the good times.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I'm trying. Is to don't wait for the wheels to fall off the bus before you decide to get help. I mean, so funny.
I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, so his idea of car maintenance is when the engine falls out on the toll road, that's the time to have the car checked. But that's the way people approach their relationships and marriage sometimes. It's like, well, when things get, right now, okay, that's kind of bad, but you know, oh, maybe it'll get better, or yeah, that kind of is annoying, but you know, so instead of waiting till things get horrendous in this good season of marriage, go ahead and invest in like some marriage counseling, some marriage seminars, some books. Now you can talk.
Well, let me say that about Ken. Thank you, a great one. I really like what Kay just said about when things are going good, that's the time to do the maintenance, to do the marriage tune-up, get marriage counseling while it's good. As a pastor who used to do marriage counseling, I can't tell you how many guys who've come to me who their wife for years begged them to get marriage counseling. And they said, no, I'm not going, I'm not going, I'm not going. And then their wife walked out the door, and all of a sudden they're all ears and goes, I'm ready for counseling. Sorry, buddy, it's too late. You waited too late. You get counseling before you need it, in the good times. Now, in a relationship, no relationship stands still. You're always either moving closer together or you're moving apart. There is no relationship that stands still. It doesn't just stagnate. So if you're not growing closer together intentionally, you're growing apart. You're growing apart. Now, over the years, Kay and I have got counseling many times. When we hit a bump in the road, we go get some.
Sorry. I was just thinking of all the times.
Yeah.
And
we've got help. Every time we get a bump, we go get some help. I'll never forget the very first time we got counseling, which was in the first year of our marriage. And my salary was $800 a month. And we went to counseling, marriage counseling, and the counseling bill was $100 a week. So half of my salary is going to marriage counseling. And when people say, I can't afford counseling, I'm going, you can't not afford it. How much is your marriage worth to you? How much is your happiness worth? I'm so glad, I racked up a $1,500 counseling bill on our MasterCard, our first year of marriage. Took me 2.5 years to pay it off. I look back because that's the best $1,500 I ever spent. In fact, I've often thought about doing a commercial for MasterCard said, MasterCard saved my marriage. Okay? A saved marriage, priceless. Because people say, well, I can't afford it. I would spend $1 million for what I've got today.
Hand it over.
She's my best friend.
I love you.
She's and I'm so glad we did not give up when there were so many opportunities to do so. So that idea of invest in the good times.
Yeah, that's the time to send your roots deep, both into the Lord and into your relationship. You need to, because the harder times are gonna come. They're inevitable, they're gonna come.
Right.
So if you can send your roots down, if you can build really solid into your relationship in those times when things are going better, it's a really wise decision.
One other thing I want to say here. I think a lot of marriages die from boredom. People just get bored with each other. And so you've got to keep it creative. You've got to do fun things, and that's a good time to invest creative things. I remember Kay knows that I like hot sauce. I've collected over 350 different kinds of bottles of hot sauce from around the world. I don't just believe in hell, I eat it. Okay.
And then I said, and then he burps it.
Burps it. Yeah. Well, it's hot going in.
No, that is not what I said. That is not what I said.
And it's hot. Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well. Well, anyway, so Kay knows. Kay knows that I love hot sauce. One day she walks in. We're in a busy time. Things are going on. She walks in, she plops down 2 airline tickets in front of me. I go, what's this? She says, we're going to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I go, what's there? She goes, the International Convention of Hot Sauce. I'm going, what a woman. That is a godly woman. Blessed art thou among many.
It was fun. It was fun.
Until you ate Dave's Insanity sauce.
Yeah, I didn't believe him
nearly
that it was that hot. Yeah, but that was fun. Okay, so spring is when things are really busy and you have to be intentional about creating time and connection for the relationship. Summer is when, those rare short periods of time when things are just going so well and you need to bank and invest for the future. And then fall is a season of change. And 2 ways we want to talk about change. Change when they're good changes, and then change when it's not so good. So change when it's good is maybe you've moved. There's a major move. Maybe there's a new baby. Maybe you've just gotten married. Maybe you've taken on a new job. So there's this major life changes, and it requires such adjustment. And that can create a lot of stress, but yet it's really good. Sometimes we fight against change because it disrupts our lives. And yet, if we can look at it through the lens of, okay, this may be difficult right now, but in the long run, I am going to be so glad that we made this move, or we took that job, or we made that decision to buy that house instead of this. All of that change can actually be really good for you. And so I would just tell you, in those seasons of change, be willing to adjust. Don't be too stressed about it. Just be willing to adjust.
Tell them about our 5-second rule.
Yeah, well, we have this rule that I would say has revolutionized our communication, and it is, love this idea for 5 seconds. You know, one of us will propose an idea about something that we think might change, or just something that we think is a great idea, but to just preface it with saying, just love this idea for 5 seconds. Because in that 5 seconds, you know, while you might, if you don't preface it that way, there could be this, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Or no,
automatically, all the reasons why it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. But if you have to pause in those 5 seconds and really just hear what the other person is saying, you may find that what they're suggesting, this could be a really good thing.
And actually change, if your marriage is going to last like 39 years, you're going to go through enormous amounts of change. We're not the same people we were when we got married. And you're not going to be, if you stay with the same person for life, you grow. And you don't stay the same. So your marriage will succeed or fail by your ability to learn how to deal with change. And to realize that change can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing, but it can be a good thing, and it can keep you from boredom. But let's talk about, what about the kind of change, the things that don't change in life, like your personality? That's not going to change.
Yeah, when you kind of realize, you look over at each other and go, you ain't ever going to change, are you? And believe me, every relationship hits those moments, those kind of stuck places where you realize that the person that you are married to has some habits that drive you absolutely insane, and the likelihood that will ever change is remote and dim. And so then what are you going to do about it? How do you deal with it when the person that's my line, thank you.
It is.
No, yes, we do drive each other crazy, sincerely, honestly.
You know, and here's the thing, we've been married 39 years. And
you hesitated. Didn't he? He hesitated.
Even today, we still see things totally different. This last week, we were working on remodeling a thing in our house up high. And Kay was looking at a little architectural feature, and I was looking at it, and I was thinking it was too big, and she was thinking it was too small. And she says, well, come over here and look at it from mine. So I walk over, and I look at it, and I said, well, come over here and look at it from mine. And we still didn't agree on it. She goes, well, we just see things differently. And I said, well, that's a first.
Yeah, it's like all the time.
39 years later, we're still seeing things differently. Now, how do you deal with those things? Well, there are 3 or 4 suggestions. Let me give them to you. One of them is, stop using incompatibility as an excuse. People say, well, we're just incompatible, so we're going to divorce. I don't even believe in that term. I think the word incompatibility is a word made up by divorce attorneys to justify divorce. The truth is, you're not compatible with anybody. You will never meet anybody that you are compatible with, because nobody agrees with everything you do. So no matter who you're married, you're incompatible. There's another word for incompatibility, selfishness. And when people say we're incompatible, I have 2 words for you: grow up. Because given the right situation, if you choose to love, you can fall in love with anybody and stay in love with anybody. Now, that's another thing that's important, is to realize that love is a choice. And that people think love is a feeling. Love is not a feeling. Love is a choice. Love creates feelings. Love creates great feelings. Baby, oh baby, oh baby. Great feelings. Love creates feelings.
Do you know how silly that sounds?
Yeah. You know?
Boy. Keep going.
And so even the terminology we use, we say, I fell in love, like it's a ditch. I was just walking down the street one day and I, kaboom, fell in love. No, you didn't fall. You chose to fall in love. Now listen, You cannot control your attractions, but you can control your actions. And love is a choice. If it were a feeling, God could not command it, because you can't command a feeling. It's like telling a little kid who's crying, I command you to be happy. I'm trying, Daddy. You can't command a feeling, but you can command an action. And love is a choice. And so when people say, well, we just fell out of love. Well, you chose to fall out of love. It's not like something happened to you. We just no, you chose to stop doing the things that made you be in love, made you fall in love. And so in the changes of life, you got to make choices.
Boy, you just kind of went all over the place with that. So what I was saying
and what I was continuing to say
about differences is, you have heard Rick say this, and we'll say it again, we are so different.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was a category of so different, we would fall into the so different category. In every way, we are different. And in a relationship, that's one of the things that causes people to lose some of the great loving feelings they have, is because they don't know what to do with the differences. I mean, he's an extrovert, I'm an introvert. He is spontaneous and impulsive, and I am a planner. He's big picture, I am detail. I mean, there's been this piece of fuzz on your shirt that I have meant to take off this entire...
I don't see it.
Well, I know, but it's back here, so it's been driving me, it's been bugging me this whole time. He exaggerates. He exaggerates, and I'm very precise. I'm
Tigger.
Eeyore.
She's the Eeyore.
Yeah, he's
That's
a
exactly
dreamer.
right.
I'm a pragmatist. I mean, It is a wonder that we have made it 39 years because of our differences. But what that has required from us is acceptance. Let me give you an example. For the longest time, we had this running argument. In fact, it was a daily argument. He was raised in a family that never locked the doors. They were brought up in the country. They didn't lock doors.
Never.
I mean, it was just
Never.
Didn't even think about it. I was raised in a family, the minute the sun goes down, you turn on the 300-watt Klieg lights and put the water in the moat, let the alligators out. I mean, it's just...
Turn on the electric barb fence.
Very safety-conscious home. So we would go to bed at night, and I would, we'd be snuggling into bed, and I would say, did you remember to lock the doors? And he would almost inevitably go, no. And I'd go, well, would you go lock it? And he'd go, why did you wait until we're going to bed to ask me?
You wait until my head is on the pillow.
Well,
and then say, did you do the... Ladies. Never start a conversation the moment your husband's head is down on the pillow. The foremost fear word by a husband is, we need to talk.
I didn't say we need to talk. I said, did you lock the door?
Yeah, but you waited until my head was down on the pillow.
Okay, but how many nights do you think that we needed to lock the door? Only 365 out of every year. I mean, this isn't like it was a rare thing. Okay, so sometimes very grumpily and not happy, he would go down.
Grumpy.
Yeah, really grumpy. He would go down and lock the doors and then come stomping back up to bed. And then he's going to bed mad, I'm going to bed mad. And then I would start to say, after a few years, I would start to say, did you lock the doors? And he would say yes. And I know he was lying. And so I got in the habit of going downstairs, and maybe 2 out of the 3 doors were locked. Not all 3, but 2 out of the 3, as though somehow that was going to be okay. And it's embarrassing to tell you.
2 out of 3, that's pretty good, isn't it?
It was not
really?
enough.
No.
So I finally realized, I had this revelation, this moment of, he's not going to change. He's never, ever going to think that locking the door is important. He's never going to think that. So I finally decided, I had the simplest solution, and it was like, can't believe I didn't think of that. I locked the doors myself. I mean,
why didn't we do this 30 years ago?
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know why it took us so long to come up with that solution. But it was realizing that the differences could either continue to be this stuck place for us, and we could argue and be mad at each other all the time over something so simple, or I could stop demanding that he do it the way I wanted him to do it, even though I thought he should, but he wasn't going to. So the simplest thing was just, great, I lock the doors. Now he goes to bed happy, I go to bed happy. It was great. So where in your relationship are you doing that exact same thing? It may not be about locking a door, but you guys are locked into this mortal conflict combat over something that probably doesn't matter, a hill of beans, but you're trying to die on that hill day after day after day. Let it go. All right, anybody want to sing a chorus?
Let's sing it together.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Okay. So you get the point?
Yeah, here's the idea. See, when you're in the dating period of life, you look your best, you act your best, you smell your best in the dating. After you get married, you're going to discover that there are parts to that person you don't like. You still love the good parts, but you don't, there's some parts you don't
that
like.
reminds me, sorry.
No,
this is important.
we're not going on another one now. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so we made two big mistakes when we first got married. The first was we didn't know each other. That's a whole nother story, but we really
I knew enough. I knew what you looked like. Woo!
It obviously wasn't enough to get us through all the rough parts. So anyway, so we didn't know each other. That was a big mistake.
Yeah.
Second thing was I read way too many romance novels. And so I, as a young teenager, had all these visions of what I thought, you know, the man on the white horse was supposed to be. And the problem is it got in the way of me loving the real man who is spectacular. But because I was expecting and had this whole vision of this dime store novel kind of guy. Yeah. I was like, what did I say? Yeah,
No, you know, here, let me summarize this for you. She thought she was getting Fabio. She got Flabio. And I just can't twirl my hair anymore.
He used to have hair as long as I do.
When we got married, my hair was as long as Kay's, and I could do this, but...
Little John Lennon glasses, he was so cute.
Yeah. Here's the point, let me just say this. You gotta decide whether you're gonna love somebody in spite of themselves. Because there are things, when you get married, about your mate that are never gonna change, no matter how much, and you gotta decide, am I gonna force them to change before I love them? That's not real love. You have to accept things that are real when you're not always dealing with the ideal. And a great marriage, and Kay and I have a great marriage, is the union of two great forgivers. A great marriage is the union of two great forgivers. That's how you have a great marriage.
We've decided that we're gonna be happily incompatible.
Yeah.
For the rest of our lives. Yeah. We will never be completely compatible. We are just too different. Too different. Yeah. But we are really content to be happily incompatible.
Every couple has a song, and ours is a song from the 80s, I guess it is. I don't remember.
A long time ago.
I don't know. See, you know, Huey Lewis and the News is called Happy to Be Stuck With You. And in that song, it says, you know, we thought about giving up and we went through all these tough times, but he goes, we got the same address, we might as well just hang out together. Yeah. You know, same phone,
same phone number, same address, we might as well stay.
So we're happy
to be stuck together. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so spring, busy, be intentional. Summer, bank for the future. Fall, if there's good changes, learn to adjust and look for the positives in it. When you run into the places where there's not gonna be a change, then that's an opportunity to grow in acceptance and in deciding that you're going to be happily incompatible. And then there's the season of winter. And if you are if you're married for any length of time, you're going to go through winter, and that's a season of loss. That's a season of loss and grief. It could be anywhere from an affair that happens in your marriage, a betrayal, there's a death. There's a bankruptcy, cancer. Yeah. I've gone through cancer twice. There could be mental illness. There could be, you know, a child of yours goes to jail, goes to prison, maybe just actually breaks your heart.
Any kind of crisis.
In our case, you all know that we are actually in the winter season in our marriage because of Matthew's death 19 months ago. And we have seen the reality of the benefit of all the years that we have banked toward this time, all the roots that we sent down deep into our love and into God, so that when the bottom fell out, when for us our son took his life and we faced the worst day of our lives, that we could survive. When Matthew was so ill, he was mentally ill since he was a little boy, and it got worse and worse. And because we're different, we approached him differently. And there were some times I thought we should handle him this way, and there were times that Rick thought that we should handle him this way, and we were often at polar opposites of how to respond. And I used to be afraid that if Matthew did take his life someday, as I was always worried he would, that we would approach grieving differently as well, and that somehow it would tear us apart. Not divorce. I mean, we settled that. It wasn't about divorce, but that somehow in our grieving and handling it differently, that it would pull us apart and our intimacy would be destroyed and things would never be the same again. But I can really tell you truthfully, honestly, that Rick and I are closer today than we were even 19 months ago. That this deep, tragic, dark, cold season in our lives and in our marriage we are closer than we've ever been. There's nobody on the planet that knows what it's like to be Matthew's parent besides Rick. There's no one else that understands my grief more deeply than Rick. And so he's the person I want to be with, and vice versa. Nobody understands his grief the way that I do, and so it has drawn us closer.
Yeah. I would not have wanted to go through all this the last 19 months by myself. That's one of the benefits of marriage, is it takes you, you're gonna have crises in life whether you get married or not. I'd rather go through it with a support system, with somebody who you are happily incompatible with, but you agree, that our love is stronger. We don't fix the blame, we fix the problem. That's one of the key things to do. And one of the things that we decided, long before any of the crises in our marriage happened, was divorce was just not an option. We took our vow to God seriously. And when we got married and we signed that wedding license, we took a vow before God and said, divorce is not an option. We said, we closed the escape hatch, we locked it, we double locked it, and we threw away the key. And so that forced us to work things out. So people say, have you ever considered divorce in 39 years of marriage? No. Murder, yes, but divorce, no. No.
But I have to tell you, there have been, I can speak for myself, I'm not going to speak for Rick, but I can tell you that there have been some moments that we have had big enough arguments, big enough fights, big enough disagreements, said some things to each other that were terrible, that were cruel, that were mean, that were not kind, and sometimes the hurt and the wound from some of those things. There have been some moments in which I thought it would be so much easier. I'm done. I'm tired of forgiving. I don't want to forgive anymore. I don't want to keep doing this. Honestly, some moments when it's like, I don't even want to breathe the same air you're breathing.
Especially after garlic.
Or that hot sauce. But I'm just being really honest with you to tell you that is where we are. We're not trying to pretend like, we just occasionally in 39 years have had a few arguments. No, we've really struggled. There's been a lot of blood.
For our marriage.
There's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And you might think, well, why would I want to even go through it if it's that difficult? If it's really blood, sweat, and tears, partially because we are so different. Why would I want to even go through that? And I would just tell you, it's because it's worth it. It's because of the intimacy. We talk about the tunnel of chaos. And Rick mentions this a lot. You'll probably want to go into this. But that tunnel of chaos, the couples who go through the tunnel of chaos, who stick with each other in that tunnel when the bottom has fallen out and you're really not sure that you can forgive again, that you can stay committed to each other, that maybe it'd just be easier to start over. But to go through that tunnel of chaos, on the other side of the tunnel, why go through it? Because on the other side is greater intimacy. And that's what we have hung in there for, was for that greater intimacy.
What she's talking about is there's fake intimacy and there's real intimacy. When you're dating, it's all fake intimacy. Even in early marriage, it's fake intimacy because you don't know how much you can trust your spouse with your deepest fears. And so there's still part of you that you hold back, even in early marriage. That's fake intimacy. Everybody wants soul intimacy. That's real intimacy over here. How do you get from here to here? There's only one way. Go through the tunnel of conflict. Conflict is the essence. It's the only way you get to real intimacy. If you never have any conflict, you'll live at a shallow level. It means you're not dealing with the deepest differences in your marriage. And when you're in that tunnel, it's dark, it's black, it's loud. There's emotion and you go, I don't like this, and everything in you wants to back out, say, let's just put a top on it and go back to fake intimacy. But if you'll hang in there in that, eventually you run out of energy and you run out of words and hurt and pain and tears, and you come out on the other side in true intimacy.
Doesn't happen automatically. You know, I mean, you have to choose, and you have to choose to not destroy each other in that tunnel.
And one of the things that you have to do in the crises of life that we've had to learn, and I say, it's not like we've learned it, we have to keep learning it, and that is never judge feelings and never try to talk your spouse out of a feeling. A feeling is neither right nor wrong. A feeling is simply a feeling. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just a feeling. Why is it when somebody else has a feeling that you don't have, you feel duty bound to talk them out of it? That's just dumb. Just because you don't feel it doesn't mean somebody else does. And you don't need to convince them that it's a wrong feeling. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just a feeling. One of the things that caused Kay and I to grow closer and deeper after Matthew's suicide and during these 18, 19 months of pain, dark days, is that I made the decision and Kay made the decision that we were just gonna be there in each other's feelings and not try to talk each other out of them. So if one of us felt angry, the other was angry with them, felt the anger too. If we felt grief, we both felt grief at the time. If we both felt confusion, we just sit in the confusion. And we don't try to talk each other out of feelings. And when you don't really feel the way they're feeling, you do what Kay has done a lot. And she just kind of reaches out and just touches me and grabs my hand. And just in that moment, it's going, maybe she doesn't even say, yeah, I'm feeling it. It just means,
I'm with you.
I'm with you.
I'm with you.
I'm with you. That's a big deal.
That's one of the greatest gifts that you can give in a relationship, is to be with the other person in, as Rick says, in their feelings, whatever it is they're feeling, but to be with them in those feelings. And in the winter of a relationship that you're in, to get through it, you can make that decision to be with your husband or your wife. You know, there's one other thing I want to say as we close. For those of you in your, a lot of you are in your 20s or early 30s or maybe younger than that, we've noticed that maybe you're afraid. We've talked to a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, and they're actually afraid to get married. Terrified. Yeah. Maybe you've seen your own family fall apart, maybe lots of people that you know that said that they were going to love each other for the rest of their lives and they didn't, and you're worried that you don't have what it takes to last in a marriage 60, 75 years. What if you fail? What if it falls apart? What if you make all these promises and then you can't keep them? And you just get scared to jump in, scared to actually commit in a relationship. And we want to tell you, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Marriage is hard work, but marriage is the greatest picture, as Rick has already shared, of God's love for us. We have the opportunity, not only for ourselves, but to a watching world who our marriages can give the picture to them of this is what it's like for Christ to love his church and that profound spiritual nature of the relationship. Don't deprive the world and yourself of marriage because you're afraid. You have a church that cares about you. You have a church that will support you. You have a church that will pray for you. So you can be absolutely certain that we are going to pray for you in your relationships and in your marriages. And we ask that you pray for us because we are two imperfect people who need your prayers. But I mostly just wanted to say just that little, don't be afraid. Marriage is worth the effort and it is the best thing. I'm glad. I can say it in the last service. I was afraid if I said it in all the other services, I'd cry too much, but I can say it in this one. I'm not the same person that I was. Being with you has changed me into a much better person than I would have ever been on my own. And through the rough times, through the hard times, and there have been plenty of those, and there's been sadness, so much sadness in this last year. But I'm grateful that God has used you to change me. I don't know that I would have liked the person that I was. You have made me a better person, and I love you so much.
Well, and when I was teaching that point about the number one tool God uses in your life to make you like Jesus is your spouse, there was a big picture in my mind because I knew who it was in my life. Because let me just talk to each of you as a different group. Some of you grew up in homes and the marriage didn't last. And it brought a lot of pain to you, and I'm sorry. You make the decision that you're going to break the cycle, that you're going to start a new legacy for your family name, that you are going to make it, and that your children are going to make it, because divorce is not going to be an option for you. Maybe you were in a marriage and it failed. You know what? We love you. We're grateful for you. There's grace in this place. And what matters is not where you've been. What matters is the direction of your feet right now. If you are not married, I want to ask you to make a commitment that when I marry, it's for life. It's not as long as we both shall love. It's not until it gets hard. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to walk out of this marriage or how many times Kay wanted to walk out of this marriage. And I'm so glad we didn't. Because when you're in that pain, all you can think about is, I am in so much pain right now, and you have no idea how many other people it's going to affect. If Kay and I had separated in those early years of marriage and we just said, this isn't worth it, it's just too much work, it's too hard, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. There would be no Saddleback Church. There would be no 40,000 people baptized who found Christ in this church. There would be no purpose-driven life. There would be no peace plan. The one simple decision that she or I could have made could have affected literally millions of other lives. You don't know how your decision will affect somebody else. So it's not about you. You got to think about your commitments. And I would say, if you're not married, say, I'm going to make a commitment. I don't care how bad it gets. It's not an option. We're going to work it. We're going to work through if it kills us. It nearly did us several times. But I'm so glad. I will tell you this. If you're in marriage, make a commitment to stay in that marriage. It really is worth it. The joy that comes from a long-term relationship, the joy of growing old with somebody that you know, now I'm going to cry, deeply, perfectly, imperfectly, but intimately, the strength that it gives you. I have been able to handle enormous amounts of stress because I was married to this woman. And what she gave to me gave me the ability to juggle 22 balls at the same time and accomplish an enormous amount of things in my life because we did it as partners, as a team. I will say one of the things that, and I'll close with this, that Kay and I had that a lot of people didn't get is we grew up in stable marriages. Kay's parents were married 60 years before her daddy died. My parents were married 53 years before my mother died. And I'll always be grateful to my parents for staying together because my mom and dad got married in World War II, and after they had only been married 3 months, my dad was shipped out in World War II to the South Pacific where he was gone for the next 2 years. And in that, he was in Guadalcanal, and he was in the Solomon Islands, and he was in a lot of hand-to-hand, even knife combat. And he came back from that war a different man. And when he came back, my mom could have said, you're not the guy I married, because the war changed my dad. You're not the guy I married. But my mom made the decision to stick with it. And I'm a result. And then our marriage is a result. And you and this church are a result. None of that would have happened if my mom had walked out on that marriage. So I'm begging you as your pastor to not be afraid of marriage, to go in it with eyes wide open, be willing to do the hard part because the good part is so much better when you do the hard part instead of just giving up. Does that make sense? Amen. That makes sense. All right, I think we ought to pray. And I want us to pray, okay, I want you to pray for 2 different groups of people. I want you to pray for all of the couples that are here that are married. And then I want you to pray for everybody here who says, I do not have the gift of singleness. I really do want to be married.
Okay. All right. Father, I pray right now for the singles in our church, for those who want to be married, who are looking forward to that at some point in their lives. God, you know what fears they might have, what anxieties, what trepidation. But Father, I ask that you would give them a clear picture of a marriage, not unrealistic, not the Fabio novel kind of stuff, but of real men and real women who choose to enter deeply into each other's lives, to allow themselves to know and be fully known. And that from that union, God, you would produce a family and stability in our society and in our church, and that they would be accurate reflections of your love for us. So I pray that for all the single men and women in our church. And I pray for those marriages. I pray for those that are in that spring season of busyness, and they may be like ships passing in a night. God, give them wisdom to stop a little bit, to pause, to look for intentional ways to reconnect, to say that you matter to me and our marriage matters. I pray for those in the summer season, God, things are going well, and we're so grateful for that. May they be wise enough to bank and plant and send down their roots for the harder times that are yet to come. And for those, Lord, who are in that fall season of change, big changes, give them the ability to adjust, to make the needed adjustments that have to happen so that they can thrive. And for all those millions of places, God, where we're not going to change, and we're kind of stuck, and we're just who we are, but that we would lovingly accept each other and not hold out unrealistic expectations, but stop the fights over things that don't really matter. God, I pray for those who are in winter, as Rick and I are. There's been loss, there's been hurt, there's been wounding. Holy Spirit, would you blow a warm fire of comfort and strength and peace and healing over broken hearts. God, we offer to you as a church our marriages, our relationships, and may they bring glory to you, Jesus Christ. And I pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. We love you guys. Love you. Let's go.